смолкнут над водой.
In the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Soviet Union was the great enemy, and American high schools mostly offered classes in French, German, and Spanish, the languages of allies and neighbors. In the 1950s and 60s, this building in Kingston, Washington was a Nike anti-missile site, defending the Seattle area from the object of our fears, the Soviet Union. The 90s have a different look. The Cold War is over, and Russia has opened its doors to the world.
We're here, we made it. We're going to make the train connection.
The Nike missile site has also changed. It's now Spectrum, an alternative public high school. Spectrum accepts disaffected students and prizes self-expression. Its defining principle is to support the human dignity of every student. As a critical part of this, since 1991, Spectrum has been linked with the Omnibus School, founded by Alla Nagavitsina in Yekaterinburg, a city in central Russia. Now, in the fall of 1994, 7 Spectrum students, Stephanie, Mike, Haron,
we're playing cards. What game are we playing?
Jessica, Brian, Tyler,
Never had a better time.
and Nermina are traveling with 2 teachers, Phil Davis and Sherry Strymikes, to Yekaterinburg for 36 days to get to know their omnibus counterparts and to explore the new Russia.
Кроссовки.
Sneakers. Sneakers. Tennis shoes. Sneakers.
Sneakers. Sneakers.
Sneakers. Sneakers.
For these teenagers, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and perhaps a chance to begin a process of personal transformation.
Hi. I'm glad to see you.
It's the first day in Yekaterinburg. The students are taking the first step, getting to know each other.
Yeah, maybe we should ask, like, why did you come?
Stephanie, yeah, okay. I came over to Russia not knowing much about the culture or the language. Still don't. Learning more each day. But I mainly came over to meet people and have fun.
Well, I came to meet all of you and or study the culture and language and for the experience.
Okay, Jessica.
I came to show you gummy bears and bubblegum. No, actually, I came because I wanted to meet more people, like Russians and stuff. And I wanted to learn about you, and I wanted to learn language.
For the next 5 weeks, the American students would live with their Russian families, go to school together, eat together, and play together. To make the trip a success, though, the students needed to really get to know each other and break down the distance between cultures. Some of this would just happen, but the students and teachers also picked 2 subjects of general interest, Russian culture and human rights, to focus the exchange. During the trip, Spectrum and Omnibus students were required to explore and share these topics. But most importantly, Spectrum students would be immersed in a completely different culture, a process which would give them some perspective on their own lives. And in turn, the Omnibus students would be exposed to the self-expressive nature of American teenagers. This cultural cross-fertilization would be a major lasting benefit of the exchange. First, however, it was time to get to know the city. Yekaterinburg has a population of about 2 million people, and in some ways it's not unlike an American city. For most of the American students, though, just being in a place this large was an adventure. Yekaterinburg was a big military manufacturing site. Until 3 years ago, it was off limits to all foreigners, and tourists are still uncommon. However, it is full of varied culture. There are gypsies on the streets, Russian Orthodox churches on hilltops, and some fascinating historical sites.
An old church, a Soviet monument.
Early on in the exchange, Omnibus teacher Lena Kiselova took the students to a famous and moving spot. This cross marks the place where Tsar Nicholas and his family were assassinated in 1918, at the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution.
I had a plan of the room where they were shooting. Here, shot. Yeah. Here stands Tsar's family. Here was Tsar and his son, and here are two. Servants. Yeah. Here were servants, and these were the shooters.
This was part of the context that the Spectrum students needed. We Americans are generally less well informed about other countries than they are about ours. In addition to the Russian history, students got a perspective on the consumerism of the Western world, as Jessica described.
When I go into a store here, I think of malls at home and all the stuff there. But when I come into a store here, it's just like a little store. I mean, it has the things that you should need and stuff, but it doesn't have the things you don't need that you want to get, though, like America.
But every place the Spectrum students went, they were generously fed and cared for. The history and wonderful Russian hospitality were important, but so was time to just hang out. There was a trip to the fairground and a hike in the birch forest. As the students got to know each other, they discovered common ground.
Hey, Bob. These are my friends. This is Nastya. Nastya, say hi. Hi. This is Luba, my dear friend Luba.
For instance, Stephanie and Luba shared an interest in the law.
I was talking to Luba about it, and explaining, my feelings, why I wanted to be a lawyer. And she said, I know how you feel. And then I said, okay, well, how? And I stopped talking, and she sort of just continued on from where I quit. And she pretty much said the exact words that I would have said.
The students also discovered differences in everyday life.
This is the milk from the plastic bags, guys. You've never seen this before. Also, when you get to Russia, you'll see things like beer in a bag. It's funny as heck.
And differences in social attitudes. The American students were surprised by the Russian emphasis on education.
They place a much higher value on education than our country does, our culture. It's like the number one thing.
Everybody, well, that I've met once seems to want a good education.
It surprised me, It's like education, everybody's so into their education.
The Russian students saw a freedom of expression in the Americans that impressed them.
I think they're more free in clothes, and not only in clothes. I think in mine too.
There's a difference between American and Russian students because I think American students, more free.
Nermina is a refugee from the war in Bosnia. She came to the U.S. and chose to attend Spectrum. From her experiences with communism, she said the lack of individual expression is a hangover from the old Stalinist educational system.
I know that I experienced it in school, that we're not supposed to have our own personal view of a book, a poem, a picture. We were supposed to have the feeling about it, the same feeling that our teacher did. Otherwise, we wouldn't get good grade.
In our country, a little bit earlier, you can do nothing. Everything were forbidden. But now you can do completely everything. It's too hard to feel freedom in your soul, in your heart.
Quiet on the set.
To explore the differences and similarities, Mike was assigned to do a videotaped survey of Russian and American attitudes.
We're asking questions like, what was your stereotype for the Americans, what was your stereotype of Russian lifestyle or the people, and what struck you the most, and similar questions. And then for the Russians, they're sort of similar.
What were some of your stereotypes of American lifestyles?
In Americans, I liked the thing that every family very often has its own house, and it is my dream to have my own big house where it will be only my house. And
The biggest difference, I think, is when Russians go to school, they want to. They just want to go to school.
And some Russian